welcome to those in the college, to any of us who are joining from outside of SERC as well. There might be a few of you. For those of you who are not aware, our Entrepreneur Club is a hub at SERC for those current and alumni students, giving them an opportunity to foster their innovation and entrepreneurship and sort of help cultivate and develop your ideas. And so our Entrepreneur Club events here are aimed to offer you an insight for those who are already in the various fields, such as yourself, Karishma, and you can sort of help us to sort of learn about your own entrepreneurial journey. So we're really delighted to have you with us today as our next guest. I'll do a short intro here if you don't mind. So for those of you who are not aware, Karishma is a multidisciplinary designer, creative entrepreneur and founder of the studio Karishma's World. And as the co-founder and co-director of Belfast Design Week, Karishma is an expert collaborator. So we're very pleased to hear her insight into how to manage innovation and creativity and networking, essentially. So in this talk, Karishma will give us her guidance into the art of building client and collaborator networks from the perspective of both the entrepreneur and the creative. So we're very excited. If Karishma, you wanna take over, and excited to hear.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much for that intro. I'm just going to share my screen. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm Karishma, as you know by now, and I'm really excited to be here. I haven't actually done a talk about my own work for a little while, so it was quite interesting going into the archives and picking out some images of things that I've done over the last few years as well. So hopefully you enjoy the next half an hour and the chat after that as well. So as Rachel mentioned as well, this event's all about networking, building client relationships, and of course design as well. What I'm going to try and do is actually just embed it into the story of how I have set up my own business and also how I co-founded Belfast Design Week. So you'll get hopefully little bits of what we did from our experience and maybe some sort of tips from that as well. And as Rachel said as well, this is obviously about everyone learning. So I've always found as well, attending these things, you always take away something really interesting from people's different ways of working as well. So thank you very much. So a little bit about me, just to begin with. So I am originally from India. I moved to Belfast when I was 7. My mum is a doctor here. She got a job here and we moved across here after my father passed away. So we've been here for a very long time. I've lived here for most of my life, except for when I was in London for university, and then I came back again as well. So obviously I love Northern Ireland and have a real passion for everything that's going on here, and a lot invested in it in terms of my input and effort as well in terms of what I do. So I was not sure about how far back to go in terms of a story, and I thought, we're not here for several hours, so I'm not going to go all the way back to my childhood and show you images from there. So where do I actually pick up? So I kind of thought maybe about here. So just after studying foundation art and design in Belfast, I moved across to Chelsea College of Art and Design in London to study textile design. So I'd got into NCAD for fashion design in Dublin, and I got into Chelsea for textile design. I picked this course because I was really interested in material futures. They were also involved in a lot of tech and innovation around textile design, and I kind of thought that this is the area I really want to go into. So it was a very interesting course. It just showed that textile design isn't one thing, because sometimes people think of it as a very sort of traditional woven textiles, knitwear design, and that sort of thing, which is a big part of textiles. But actually, it's a very, very open field, and there's a lot to do with digital innovation, about new types of materials, and across lots of different sectors. So it's not necessarily even fashion and interiors. It's going into things like aircraft design and shoes and all sorts of different things as well. So it's quite a wide field. When I was at art college here, I found a real interest in digital design. So I actually thought that, this is an area that I really want to focus a bit more on. And after I graduated, I worked for a while in industry. So I worked for the likes of Smith & Gibson shirt makers. I worked in the retail side of it, but also in textile design, creating new designs for them. I worked in the early stages of Game of Thrones in the wardrobe and costume department, getting hands-on experience working on set as well. And then I decided that actually I really wanted to set up a business myself, but I didn't know enough about how to do it. And I actually wanted to broaden my scope of design as well. So I decided to study my master's in multidisciplinary design at Belfast School of Art at Ulster University. So this was a 2 years master's, or 2 years master's, that sounds very strange, where I decided to focus in on a particular collection and type of business I wanted to start. My background obviously was in textile design, and I decided to create a collection of accessories design and bags in particular. So my first collection that I developed and I started my business with was called One Square. So it was all to do with sustainability and how I could use something like digital design to reduce offcuts and wastage and come up with a collection of bags and accessories based around this as well. So a lot of it was to do with prototyping. It was around design thinking and thinking about the end user as well, but also coming up with basically a stylish collection of bags that could be made here as well. What I found was interesting was that there was a lot of appetite for this type of collection, but at that time when I first set up in 2014, there wasn't as much scope in terms of scaling it up, which I think has actually changed over the last 10 years. So whenever I was trying to then bring this up into the next sort of stage of production, it was really hard to go from that initial almost limited collection of bags to say, 100 or 1,000 bags. It was almost that you had to do either a really small collection or 10,000 units, and there wasn't much in between. Around that time, I also started getting more commissions around digital design, so my business actually started to change as well. I founded my own studio then after I graduated from the Masters in 2014. I called it Karishma's World. It's under my name, Karishma Kusurkar, but it was because I was encompassing so many different areas of design. So this is a video from when I first started out. I'll just mute it there to just show you the video part of it. And this was in the first co-working space that I was in, which was called the Belfast Central Studios. And this was just across from Belfast Central Library. And I was in there for about, I would say, about a year or so. And there were quite a few of us in this space, and I found that really useful. So there was a videographer, there was web designers, app designers, fashion designers, and we were all working in this space together. And I just thought that actually this is a great way to work because it's not just about me and me sitting on my own. I'm actually getting to see what other people are doing, how they're working, and we actually did end up collaborating on a few things as well. So it's a really, really great sort of start in terms of connecting with other people. I also thought having this sort of space was useful because it was a break away from my everyday. So I wasn't just continuing work and just sitting at home all the time. I was actually getting out there and seeing what was going on in the local scene as well. So I thought this was actually very useful as well. So what I found was through that master's and through the work that I was doing that I wasn't necessarily one thing. Because sometimes people like you to be one thing. And actually, when I've told people that I'm a multidisciplinary designer, they get really annoyed because they're like, what does that mean? And then you try and explain to them. And sometimes they get even more annoyed. They just want you to focus on one thing. But the reality is a lot of us are not just one thing. So we're not necessarily just, textile designers or graphic designers. Most of us do quite a range of things and are actually multidisciplinary designers. Whenever I look to the future of work, what's happening next, and also that there's so much tech coming into play, there's so much artificial intelligence, the thing that's going to make people stand out is having the sort of mix of skills that makes them a bit more unique and a bit different to what can just be replicated as well. And that's why I really think that multidisciplinary design is the future of design, that it's not just necessarily only having one focus, but it's also having other things that complement it as well that make you this sort of more holistic designer. So that's why I call myself a multidisciplinary designer, to the anger of many people as well. So these are some self-led examples of projects I've done over the years. I just told you about One Square. So that was a project in accessory design and about sustainability as well. A more recent project was the Pause project. This was all about interactive design. You could walk through Botanic Park and take a picture, and there would be different filters overlaid over it. So you could pause it at any point and the picture would be different every time you took it. So it had pattern design, interaction design, and photography involved as well, and it was digital. And then also Espionage the Card Game, which was a Kickstarter funded project that I set up a few years back. And that was all to do with game design, illustration, product design, and packaging as well. And this was also a self-led project as well. And then these are some examples of client projects. And what I've actually found over the last few years is that I've done more and more client work. So actually, I'm really trying to make a bit more space this year to do a few more self-led projects as well. So some of the client work that I've done has been with Women Folk by Black Shared Studios. I did brand identity, web design, and some of the initial launch of it as well. I recently, actually just this month, helped create this podcast called Conversation Beneath the Trees by the Irish Agroforestry Forum. So that was all about sustainable farming, quite a different area, something I don't know very much about, and I know much more about it after speaking to lots of people. And that was more to do with podcast design and production. I've created instructional design for games. So Agi Games was something that came off the back of my Kickstarter project. They asked me to do some work on Zura and Hasp, which are two games that they were releasing. And then Inclusive Global Histories was a more recent project by the Ulster Museum as well. And I did exhibition design and design for inclusion because it was all to do with the origin of all these objects in museums. It's something that's being talked about quite a lot. Where did they actually come from? And how can we be really honest about the conversations around them as well? So this involved lots and lots of partners, and it was all to do with designing this big space as well. I'm also a co-founder of multiple ventures. So these on the left-hand side are more project-based ventures. So the Design Salon was a design community we set up in 2014. 25 Pop-Up was a retail pop-up that sold products that were £25 and under, which we did a few years ago. The Pop-Up Design Museum was showcasing local designers' work across lots of different businesses in Belfast City Centre. The Curated Pod is more the podcast section of what I do as a business. It's all about reviewing podcasts and about looking more deeply into podcast making as well. My Block was a project over the pandemic to get people to shop more locally with local independent businesses of different sizes. And Small Town Big Dreams was or is an audio production house where we're creating lots of different podcasts as well. So as well as these projects, I'm co-founder and co-director of two companies. So Venture Folk is a cooperative. So we're creating lots of different types of projects that are all to do with innovation based around the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And Belfast Design Week, which I'll tell you a lot more about in a moment, we've set up from 2015 onwards as well. So all of these projects involve so much of collaboration. Most of what I do, I could definitely not do just on my own. It's such a core part of everything that I'm doing. So I'm also a podcaster and I'm also a facilitator as well. And I know that it seems like I'm doing a million things, but they're not all at once. They're all over multiple years and at different times of the year as well. So for podcasting as well, I review podcasts and I do it once a week. I've reviewed over 300 podcasts for BBC Radio Ulster's programme, The Ticket. I'm also a facilitator of design thinking workshops. I've developed podcast development workshops and taught design as well over the last 10 years. So there's quite a range and quite a scope to what I do. But the most important thing, as I mentioned there, is just that a lot of this is to do with collaboration. So I'd also call myself a collaborator. And that's on lots of different scales. It can be that sort of casual collaboration where you're just chatting with someone about a project that you're doing, but it can be much deeper and much more invested sort of collaboration as well. And some people I've worked with for multiple years on multiple projects as well. So collaboration can be at many different levels. And I love this photograph because this was during a late night design tour that we set up. And this picture itself has so many different types of designers and artists in it. And what's really great about Belfast and about Northern Ireland is that people are very willing to go out and support other people's work. And I think this is the type of collaboration that I've really seen works well, because sometimes networking collaboration has a bad rep because you imagine really slick people handing people business cards, but really this is what it's all about. It's that sort of word of mouth, getting to chat to people, getting to know what they're doing, and then also sharing what your projects are as well. So you're in each other's minds, and then if there's something that comes up, you can work on things together. So it's really important to get out to these things, to get out to exhibitions, depending on what area you're interested in as well. So the relevant sort of exhibitions or networking spaces or events of different kinds as well. And you'll meet all of the people there because Belfast and Northern Ireland, we're small compared to the sort of global scale of entrepreneurship. So it's really important we all support each other too. So Rachel and Natasha asked me to talk through Belfast Design Week as a project, and actually I thought this is the perfect project that showcases collaboration, co-founding a new venture, and also tells the story of how things have developed over a period of time as well. So Belfast Design Week started off whenever we created the design salon community. So we used to meet about once or twice a month. We used to discuss all different kinds of projects, what we'd really love to see happen in Belfast and in Northern Ireland as well as designers. And what we found was that lots of people were showing up to these meetings. It was almost like they were hungry for meeting other people, getting to know what was going on, and connecting. And some of it was very casual. We just meet up, have a coffee, have a chat, and discuss what we were really interested in as well. But it was really important making those initial sort of connections. And I am in touch, or friends, or colleagues with most of the people that started off in the design salon as well. So this was from an early meeting, so I really had to dig into the archive of lots and lots of folders that we have to find these images. So this was at the very start, and we literally had this brainstorming session where we had a wall of lots and lots of post-its. So it's a bit like design thinking, putting all the ideas out there in terms of what we'd love to see for Belfast. And some of the common threads that we had were that people were doing brilliant things, lots of interesting projects, but different parts of the sector didn't know what the other parts were doing. So say you were a graphic designer, you might not know what fashion designers were doing in Belfast, or say you were a fashion designer, you might not know what was going on in tech. So we want to think of a way that all of these things could come together, people could share knowledge, get to know what was going on locally, but also then band together to pitch for more global projects, even things that they might not be able to afford on their own, but maybe could do as a collective as well. So there were lots of different brilliant ideas that came up out of this as well. So that was the origins of the thoughts behind Belfast Design Week. So as part of this, we started to look to other places to see what was going on. And what we kept seeing was that Design Week keeps coming up all the time for all the different cities known for design. So we had Paris Design Week, Dutch Design Week, lots and lots of design weeks across the world, Design Week Portland as well. And actually, there are tons of design weeks. So you can see that almost every country has some form of design week, if not multiple design weeks. And that's why we decided to actually call our project then Belfast Design Week rather than something else, because we want to fit onto this global map of design weeks all over the world. We thought that a week of design might be a perfect way as well to showcase what was going on in Belfast, because it could involve lots of different things. You could showcase events, projects, you could collaborate on new things as well. So we kind of thought this is a great way to just kick this off and turn this into a project. So in 2015, we took advantage of the Year of Irish Design. So they had created this brilliant opportunity to create new projects, new events in the north and south of Ireland as well. And really, they want to connect up with Northern Ireland. So it wasn't just about, a Dublin-focused design week. It was all about reaching out to all parts of Ireland and Northern Ireland as well. And so we decided to use some of the funding from this to kick off the very first Belfast Design Week. So this is us, slightly fresher looking a few years ago in 2015 in the Cathedral Quarter. And what we decided to do was have a proper launch for it and really kick this off and invite the local design community to get involved. So from the left to the right, so we've got Carla McNally, Catherine McGuinness, Christine James and myself, and we came together to really start this off in 2015. With our launch event, it was in the Harp Bar, and we found that there were so many people that were so supportive and wanted to be a part of it. We found local print designers, we found local bloggers, people that were actually just starting out their own businesses, students as well. And they all wanted something good to happen in Belfast in design, so they all came together here as well. In 2016, then we decided to build upon our initial offering of events. So initially we kicked off with the conference, we had a small series of talks, but this is the year we decided to go a little bit bigger and start to look at things like workshops and making and different ways of approaching Design Week as well. So we went to Fab Labs and we got people to design 3D lamps with the help of the Fab Labs team. We had a brilliant design event with Annie Atkins, who's the graphic designer on the Grand Budapest Hotel, who was talking all about design for films as well. And this was in the movie house, so before it was obviously pulled down recently. And it was just another really different type of event, because you maybe had people going there that had an inkling about design but never thought of it as something that they would really love doing, or maybe that films were linked up with it as well. So we created everything to go with it. So from the merchandise to sort of special goodie bags and everything around it as well. So we were thinking about it as more than just an event, that you have something you take away from it, that the people you're selecting to be there as well as speakers have something really different to offer as well. And then we also thought about alternative venues. So instead of having everything in your typical sort of meeting space or event or conference space, we decided to have events in coffee shops and different places like restaurants or retail spaces as well. So this was in established, as it was just gaining popularity. Obviously, it's still really, really popular. So we booked it out for an evening, and we hosted an event called Share 6 here. So designers actually came in with physical products and actually took them around the space, and everyone got to ask lots of questions and actually handle materials and products as well. So this was in 2016. Then in 2017, what we decided to do was this late night design tour. So this was actually an idea that came from another collaborator that had spoken with Christine, and they said, you know, we'd love to have something in the evenings. It's really hard for people to get to things during the day, and we'd love to see, you know, behind the scenes as well. I know one of the pet things that I really love about design is seeing things like sketchbooks and going into people's studios and being really nosy to see the process behind the final thing that people have come up with as well. And that's why the late night design studio tours were then born from that. So what we did is that we went into different artist spaces, and some of them no longer exist. Like this one was Fourth Floor Studios. So that building is now, I think, being pulled down or has been pulled down. But there were lots of little artist studios in here. And this was Sean Henry, who is a knitwear designer. He was showing us his studio space and demonstrating knitwear design as well. And it was just amazing to think that, you know, if you're on the street and you looked up to fourth floor, you'd have no idea that this is what was going on in that building. But because we had this network of people and we were connecting with all of these designers, they invited us into their spaces and said, yes, we'd love to have people look around and see what we're doing. You know, we can connect with them, maybe collaborate with them, and even, you know, sell products to new people as well. So it was great for them in terms of audiences too. So this was very interesting, and this is one of the favorite things we saw on that tour. And of course, it was very rainy. Of course, on that evening in November, that's what we've found every November we've run Design Week, that the one thing that's really annoying every year is the weather. It's always terrible, rainy and windy as well. But you can also see that despite all of that, people showed up and wanted to take part, brought their umbrellas, and really went on this tour with us as well. Then in 2018, what we did was start to invite more international speakers. We'd had a few over the past couple of years, but we brought in a special sort of workshop for this one. So we had Stephen Morris Graham, who was working with Us Folk, the illustration agency, and Nick Gazin, who was working with Vice magazine. So the two of them had already done a collaboration together, and Stephen suggested to us, you know, why don't we bring Nick over and do a workshop and a talk with him as well? So we had a discussion, and we thought, you know, this would be a great opportunity for people to learn more about how to illustrate for magazine design, and how to also actually design things that are a bit more controversial as well, things that are maybe a bit more outspoken in terms of design. So this was almost looking at the fringes of design and art. So how can you create something that is commercial enough, but also has maybe a strong sort of voice or opinion behind it as well. And so we invited him to come along. So as part of his visit to Belfast then, Nick created this zine with lots and lots of designers and illustrators from Belfast. So this was hosted at the Vault Artist Studios downstairs, and people created this new magazine called the Belfast Fastball. And basically people spent lots and lots of time just illustrating, drawing, collaging, and created this collaborative zine together. And it wasn't necessarily about the sort of end product. The whole objective of this was not that we have to create this scene. It was more about, you know, how can we get people to sort of naturally engage with other people, chat, get to know others, and then create something that is really different, maybe from what they even do in their day to day, but something that's a bit fun and memorable. And everyone got a copy from this afterwards as well. So sometimes the low-tech solutions can be really, really useful, because this is basically, you know, collaging, illustrating by hand, using a photocopier. but it really brought people together. And there's nothing better than having worked on something and seeing that end result together as well, that, you know, we have achieved something, we've created something together. And of course, Nick Gazin was very mischievous and hilarious the whole time as well. We also were really interested in starting conversations through other types of events. So we were hosting different types of design supper clubs. This was one hosted in the Unique Art Shop in Ulster University. And we had Jackie Sheridan from Us Folk doing a talk at this as well. So what we tried to do with all of our design supper clubs was getting a local designer or illustrator to give a 15-minute presentation. There would be some specially designed things around the space. So for this one, Us Folk had designed lots of table mats. So again, there's that whole collaborative nature. We've done so many projects with Us Folk over the years. And it was that sort of enmeshing of different things. We also had Best Buds decorate the table. We had a little pink kitchen supply the food. So it's not just about you know, us doing everything. We don't have the knowledge, first of all, to do every single thing, but also we wouldn't be the best at doing everything. And it's much more fun working with lots of other people as well. So one of the questions we get asked is, well, how do we even start this? Because it's very easy to say that, yes, we collaborate with these people. But it does sometimes take a little bit of, you know, reaching out, making those connections. Then over time, these build up into more solid projects as well. So for example, we might have had initial talks with Us Folk a few years before this, and then slowly worked on different projects together, building into something like this as well. So it's building that trust and knowing that you're having common goals that you want to work towards, and that takes a bit of time as well, but it's definitely worth it. 2019 was probably our biggest year. We decided to go quite crazy with it, actually. We set up 100 events in 1 week all across Belfast. There were small and big events, and it was really busy. We were getting up really early every morning. I remember just getting in the car, blasting Placebo, getting to the event, and it would just be the sort of same thing every morning, you know, in and out of all the spaces, and we would end very late at night as well. So it was a really hectic time for us. And obviously, you know, Design Week, yes, we were doing it in November, but the planning for it would maybe start in January of that same year. So it was never just that, you know, we show up in November, because people would say, oh, you must start planning in October. And it was like, oh no, we wish it was October. It was always much earlier than that, around January time usually. So this is a short video just to show some of the things we did in our biggest year probably, which was 2019, just before the pandemic. So I'll just play this short video and talk through it as it's playing. So this was again Ross McConaughey. So he's the one that shot the first video that I showed of my studio space, and we brought him back to do this year as well. So we had lots of workshops, including things for the family. We had a pop-up design museum. We had things in spaces all across Cathedral Quarter, all across Belfast City Centre. We even somehow managed to do an outdoor event that included sketching as well. And that was quite challenging because obviously it was raining the whole time, so there had to be a marquee set up for that as well. The Bullet Hotel hosted sketching. There was a market as well. So you can see that there was a lot of output for this year. A lot of planning involved though as well. We also created a publication. We created lots of different elements to it as well. So it wasn't even just the events. There were other sort of layers to this as well. So that just gives you a sort of snapshot of what happened over that year as well. So we started to see that there was a lot of interest this year from families as well, because initially we'd been focusing more on emerging designers, design students and design professionals, but we were seeing younger and younger people and their families interested in getting them involved in design. Because people do appreciate that actually, you know, design isn't just this frivolous thing, it's a really important integral thing to a lot of different types of careers, and it is quite important to the local economy as well. So this was one of the projects we created, which was Design Stories. This was a collaboration with Turf and Grain magazine. So they had approached us a bit before this, I think maybe it was a year before this, just to collaborate on some kind of project. And we decided together that maybe this might be a great way forward to create a publication together. And that's how Design Stories was born. So this was a sort of mini version of Turf and Green magazine, and then with Belfast Design Week involved in terms of a focus on design and the types of people we were interviewing for this. So the likes of graphic designers, guitar makers, architects, And this magazine was then given out during the week as well. So this is Kieran Herson, who's a local graphic designer. We also created a Belfast Design Week podcast this year. And so we decided to interview a range of different creatives, and they basically just told us what they did, how they did it, and how to go about it. And we made sure they were all from slightly different areas as well. Again, looking at things like architecture, illustration, UX design, app design, immersive design, animation. So quite a range of different things as well. And we also took over this hub space as well. So we're very lucky through Hallow Clark to get use of the space in Smithfield market area as well in Belfast. So what we did is that we set up in this building called the Butcher's Building. So it used to be a butcher's shop downstairs, and we took it over about 3 weeks before Belfast Design Week. Christine and I went in, painted it, cleaned it up, set it all up and ready to go. Ronan from Design Week did all of the vinyls for it as well on the windows, and then we were all up there sticking all the stickers. So, it's very much a hands-on process, and even that side of the collaboration within our team itself has always been very strong. That it's not just getting other people to do it all. We're almost always very much involved, hands-on doing things as well. So this was just a little look in as well. It was also great to get lots of local colleges, universities involved as well. And Ulster University were a great support in terms of engaging their students. So we particularly found the graphic design students, illustration students, and interaction students got really involved. They created a series of posters around the theme of power, which was our theme for that year. And it was really, really interesting because they were all interactive posters. People actually could come in and do things to the posters or get involved in some sort of way. That could be digital as well. So it was a very interesting poster design exhibition. And our pop-up design museum that year as well, we got local designers to either produce new work or showcase existing work in different spaces in Belfast City Centre. So this was an example where 16 South, which is a local company that works with film and TV, especially for children's programming, they set up one of their puppets, and this was in Grand Central Hotel in the lobby downstairs. So we had lots of brilliant designers take part in this event as well. And then because we were doing all of this with Belfast Design Week, we got invited to go to Birmingham Design Festival as well. And one of the cool things that happened at this festival is that we got to have our quotes put on a billboard in Birmingham as well. So their theme was truth for that year. So this was one of the big quotes that we had given that got plastered on billboards across Birmingham, which is a strange thing, but quite a cool thing, I think, as well, to take away from it afterwards as well. Then in 2020, we did another pop-up design museum. Obviously, the big change this year had been the pandemic. And so we couldn't have the same type of pop-up design museum where people were going in and out of shops because that wasn't allowed at that time. So instead we did an outdoor pop-up design museum. So everything was then placed against walls outside, inside windows facing outwards. And we had a self-directed tour as well that people could sign up to as well online. So everything had to be contactless, socially distanced and safe to do as well. So this is a short video of Alice Kearney, who created that piece. So she was also setting up as well. So we interviewed all of the different designers that were involved. The videos were shot by creating a space. And the whole purpose of that was that, because you're not getting that usual engagement of being able to speak to people, that we need to have some way of telling their stories. So a series of videos and interviews was a great way of doing that as well. One of the important things with this year's pop-up museum as well, the 2021, was that we also wanted to make sure the venues as well were represented, because it wasn't just about the designers, it was also about where they were being showcased. So Alice's work was, for example, in the OEI Music Centre, and then we had different projects in places like Tribal Burger, for example, Taboo, Donuts as well. So it was all about showcasing those small local businesses as well. And we also came up with this podcast, which is all to do with sustainable fashion. So it's called An Island Designed. And that was a collaboration again between Turf and Grain magazine and Belfast Design Week. So you can see some of these collaborations have lasted multiple years. So it's not just necessarily only a one-off project, that we've stayed in touch, done different projects together as well. Then in 2021, we were able to secure funding from Innovate UK to set up a new project called My Block. And what we'd found over the pandemic is that people were looking to shop more from local independent businesses, but maybe didn't know exactly how to do this. So what we were trying to do with my block was to get people to know what was happening in their neighborhoods or their blocks. And so, what are the latest restaurants opening up? What are the best places to shop for design? Quite a wide range of different things, and that's why we set it up. And again, we went and actually spoke to different businesses of different sizes, and we started to see, what would actually help you during this time, what would help you be showcased as well. And we managed to get a wide range of different businesses on my block. So at the minute, what we're doing with this project is that we're revisiting it because everything has changed since the pandemic in terms of businesses have opened up again and people are able to connect again. And so we're looking at how we can best support then in 2023 because it has to have a bit of a change instead of being exactly what it was when we first started out as well. Let's hop into this next one here. So we created some custom graphics and lists and ways that people could support local businesses and share that they were supporters of local businesses. Because I think one of the things as well we found was that people weren't just keen on supporting businesses in terms of buying from them. They also wanted to tell other people that, I am a supporter of local independent businesses. And that was a big part of it as well, that they want to showcase that, yes, I love local businesses and I want to shop independent. I want to spend more in my local neighborhood as well. So then 2022-23, obviously we've just moved into this new year. What we did in 2022 was, this is purposely blank, was to keep a year where we didn't actually do any specific thing for Belfast Design Week. Because what we were finding was that we'd finish a design week in November, we start again in January, and there was no time to actually strategize or think of what we wanted to do next. And in terms of the pandemic as well, that had really shifted how we were doing things. We delivered most of the events we did in 2020, 2021 online. But actually, it was that sort of power of having so much energy and so many things in one space that we had in 2019 that we wanted to have a bit more of as well. And the other thing we were thinking about also was legacy in terms of when an event is over, then what happens next? Is there some way of creating more long-lasting projects? We were having a look at different ways of doing this because we had created those different projects too. So we'd created the pop-up design museum, we'd had the podcast, the publications. So it had gone beyond just having events as well. So we were trying to think of how could we do more of this as well, and perhaps on a global scale. And sometimes it's good to leave a bit of space in your calendar because that's when interesting things come about as well. And so we came across this, which was the British Council's UK-Vietnam season 2023. And there happened to be a Vietnamese delegation coming to Belfast to meet with different design organisations. And so we met with them. And from this, we made an application for a scoping grant to visit Hanoi and have some sort of relationship with Vietnam and design organisations there. And we were successful in that. And so in January, earlier this month, we were able to actually travel to Vietnam as well. So we were able to go to Hanoi initially, and then also to Mai Chau and Paco. And what we did throughout this trip was really engage with different types of designs. We met with architects, we met with local sustainable fashion designers, with a big ceramics museum, and really got to know what Vietnamese design is all about. So the main connection we had here was also with Vietnam Design Week, and that was a sort of collaborative pairing we were thinking of as well going forward. So these are just, again, a few shots. I was very tempted to put 100 pictures from the wonderful trip that we had. But these are just a few of the things that we did. So on the left was the Blue Hmong tribe who we met through a company called Kilomet 109. That company works with lots of regional artisans to help produce really sustainable and heritage-led fabrics and garments. Then at the top is Batrang Pottery an art space, and that's where we visited to actually get to know a bit more about the heritage of the Bat Tran village in Hanoi, which makes a lot of ceramics, has hundreds of years of ceramics history. And they also actually provide things for urban outfitters now as well, so they would actually retail abroad as well. So it's not just small scale, it's also exporting on a global scale as well. And then we also met Ad Hoc, that are a group of architects, and they explore different ways of understanding the design heritage of Hanoi. So the picture at the bottom is on a trip we went around a really industrial side of Hanoi called Lo Duc Street, where we got to know a bit more about what was there before. So Vietnam has had loads and loads of factories in a lot of their cities. So it was getting to know what was there before the apartment blocks were built. So we kind of walked around that whole area and got to know it a bit more as well. So even from this project, which is very, very recent, we've developed lots of different potential collaborators and different connections as well. So obviously with Vietnam Design Week, that might be one of our main connections going forward, but also Kilomet 109, then the Ad Hoc group, Vikas and Heritage Space as well. We also met with Think Playgrounds. So Christine met with them after I'd left from Hanoi. They're working with really interesting outdoor projects, looking at how we can reimagine urban spaces. We met with Wax Atelier, that are actually a UK-based organisation working with wax making and candles, and London Metropolitan University, that are also involved in many of the same things that we are. So it's about all of these new connections and us, making an effort to make them as well. Sometimes they come about naturally, but a lot of the times we're actually going out there, applying for things, connecting with people and making those connections as well. And then finally, because I thought that maybe Rachel might want to ask some more specific questions about the different commercial angles of things, I just want to briefly show this diagram, which is one by Jessica Hish. So in terms of working in the creative industries in general, and the work that I've done over multiple years, I think one of the pressures is, how much do you, first of all, charge as a designer? How much do you pitch for if you're pitching for a project? But the biggest thing I think a lot of designers encounter in the creative sector is, should I work for free? They're often asked, we're often asked, can you just do this as a favor? Can you do this, that, and the other? And sometimes you will, if that other person has maybe done a favor for you in the past. But a lot of the time you feel under pressure to perhaps undersell yourself or work for free for something that you shouldn't. So I thought this diagram by Jessica Hish is a really great piece. And actually there's a site that shows it as well, which is all about, should I work for free? And it's quite funny because, is it for your mom? Then the answer is probably yes. But then as you're going through it, you can actually just see that actually it does tap into helping you think about how you price things and how you should maybe charge or not charge for things as well. And I've certainly found that, there isn't maybe one way of pricing things or charging for things. For me, it's been very much project-based and also venture-based as well. So if I'm working with a not-for-profit, it might be a slightly lower charge than, a bigger corporation, for example. If it's a bigger project over a longer period of time, that would be a different type of ask as well. So hopefully that's given you a bit more insight about my work. So thank you very much. This is my email address, and these are my handles for myself and Belfast Design Week. I'm redoing my site at the minute, but hopefully that'll be up and running soon as well.
Absolutely fantastic. First question I actually had was, how do you have the time for it all? You certainly are multidisciplinary, and you have clearly many facets to your toolbox. And
Yeah.
it's amazing to see all the projects you've worked on and how very different a lot of them are. But yet at the same time, it's very clear in the creative sector that they're not separate in many cases. It's all about sort of different areas of design and creativity working well together. So absolutely amazing. I'm sure if anyone has any questions, pop them in the chat. But just some of the things I've written down there was definitely about networks, connections, collaboration, helping fellow designers and your local businesses is really sounds like one of the key things that you are really keen to promote. Finding those common goals and finding the people that align with you, also really important. I like that point about strategizing and that it's okay to re-strategize, and maybe it is about taking some step backs and seeing what's going on in the world and how the world changed. And definitely COVID certainly impacted the world, and it allowed us to maybe take that step back and reevaluate and move forward and change. So I really like that as well. I guess a question that I was maybe going to ask was, for those who are wanting to know how to start those initial networks. I know you'd said the design salon was the sort of foundation of starting Design Week, but how did you first initially come together, and did you all know each other first of all, or how did that come to fruition, I guess?
That's a good question. So I met Christine for the first time when I moved back from London. So she was setting up events through Blickshare Studios, and I happened to attend one of them. So at one of those events, we were chatting away, and we realized we had a lot in common. So we said, let's link up in the future if we have other projects in mind. So then Christine got in touch in about 2014 after I'd graduated from the master's, and just sort of said, look, do you want to have a quick chat? And then we basically got our heads together, thought of who we had in our own separate networks, and we invited them in then to have a chat as well. At that time, Maven was just setting up. So Maven is a store in the Lisburn Road in Belfast, and they specialize in interior design and homeware. And they decided that they'd be happy to host all of the events as well. So we all met in the Maven space quite a few times as well.
Very good. Yeah. And what would you say would be the main tools that you would use for networking? I know you were saying about going out to events. Would you say that social media and social media platforms have played a role in how you reach out to people and getting people involved?
I think they have been, in terms of getting people involved in different projects, attending different things that we do, and collaborating as well to an extent. I think the sort of in-person connections have always been much stronger. So if there's a way of linking up the social media side of it to then an online in-person meeting or collaborating in an in-person way in some format, then I think that usually helps as well, because I think there's an extent that you can sort of message each other online, but until you actually meet, get to know the person, see the kind of work they're doing, it's really hard to have those deeper connections until you do that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think maybe perhaps because we did spend that time apart from not being able to interact in person, maybe some of us are rely a lot more on those sort of platforms to engage, but perhaps it is about getting back out there and meeting up with the people. And as you know, in person, a lot of new ideas and different things can stem from that, just from having a meeting. So definitely, that's a really good point. If anyone else has any questions, you're certainly welcome to unmute the mic. Or if you have any that you want to ask, perhaps you've thought about it, and after, Karishma, you have your details there. We can pop them in the chat if you're happy enough, if anyone wants to reach out to you and make those connections.
So I realized I talked a lot more than I'd planned to.
No, it was amazing.
I talked very
definitely
fast, so I decided to slow down, and then I slowed down too much.
it was fantastic to definitely see how as you're saying about design, you're a designer yourself, but you've also, it's very much event management and the sort of creative side of that as well. So no, it was fascinating. As I said, if anyone has any other questions, I'm just going to quickly share our screen there. And I'll also share that point you made about commercializing, because a lot of our students do come to us and say that they're unsure how to, price their products. How do they make sure that they're getting money back for the effort that they put into their work? And that can often be a difficult topic to approach, especially when you're coming starting as a brand new artist or designer, getting your name out there for people to want to pay the money for the work that you've done. So we'll definitely share that also. So thank you very much for that little diagram. That was really great.
Yeah, I was just going to say very quickly as well, just that I think sometimes people are told that creatives are bad at business or finance, so people get scared of approaching that. But there's so many good ways of linking in now, and you don't have to do it all yourself either. So if you really are bad at finance, which I think actually most people are not, that you can get someone to help you with that side of things. And there are lots of brilliant podcasts out there. So I recommend the Wallet and Girls That Invest as two really accessible podcasts all about personal finance and business finance as well.
Brilliant.
I think they're really useful.
Taking a note of that. Perfect. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And it's been fascinating to see all the work that you have done. And definitely some things I'm going to look into myself. And the next time Belfast Design Week's on, I'm certainly going to be going to some of the events, and hopefully we'll see more of that coming out in the future. I'm just going to share my screen quickly just before everyone has to leave. So just to let you know as well, as part of our Entrepreneurs Club, we are running actually a SERC Enterprise Skills Academy. So if there's anyone within the call that is aged between 16 to 24 and lives in the Ards and North Down Council area and has a business idea, there is an 8-week course starting. Actually, it's pushed back, starting on the 6th of February. So it'll be a mix of online and in-person training sessions. So if you have a business idea or maybe want to get into the area or develop your entrepreneurial skills and learn how to access that funding. Something we've been talking about today as well is accessing funding and finance. So that'll be talked about as well. So if you are interested, in the chat there is more information and a wee expression of interest form. And certainly if you want to have more information about that, that's happening. And then as well, we have our social media platforms. So we will always post about our events and different things going on within the Entrepreneurs Club. And certainly feel free to follow us on our Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter accounts for more information and stuff coming up. But apart from that, I want to say thank you very much for joining us today. Karishma, thank you again. And hope to see or hear from many of you soon. And yes, enjoy the rest of your days.
Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, everyone. Speak soon. Thanks.